return to public session. I would first apologize to everyone for taking as long as we did. However, it was important district business that we needed to conduct. At this point in time, is there any reason to approve or modify the agenda in any way? Hearing none, the agenda is approved as noted.
Are you looking to move something up on the agenda? Or might not take as long?
We are conducting explicit business on the agenda this evening for the SAU board. Is that what you're talking about, Joanna? I think where you are is on our next meeting. That's all right. I understand the question. I would like to assume that everybody signed in and that we are at the point in time where we are at public comment. Are there any elected officials in attendance? Seeing none, there are opportunities now for the members of the public to speak to the SAU board at this point in time. Is anyone that would care to speak? Seeing none, we have our faculty staff liaison, Mimi Freeman, with us this evening. Is there a comment you might care to make at this point, Mimi, regarding SAU business?
SAU business?
Yes, not school.
Probably not.
Okay. How about you, Johanna? You're up.
I'm guessing no.
Okay. Thank you. You have before you the minutes of prior meetings, March 4th. And I'd ask for any corrections or changes to the minutes of the SAU board meeting on March 4th.
Not February.
March 4th.
What about February 11th?
We're not at
That's the
February
school board.
11th yet.
That's not the
That's
SAU.
school board? And then this says SAU board.
Oh, it does. It says February 25th, SAU board, February 11th.
February
I'm just taking
11th.
them in sequence on the agenda. It doesn't necessarily mean that they took place categorically that way. Are there changes to the March 4th agenda?
Oh, okay.
Minutes? Hearing none. Are there changes to
Well.
February 11th?
Yes.
Dawn?
7A, it should be Timothy Richard, no S. And 9B, the same, Timothy Richard, no S.
Got it. Thank you. Anyone else on February 11th? Okay, hearing none, are there changes to February 25th? Okay. Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to accept the minutes either as written or as amended in the case of the February 11th minutes. So
Okay.
moved. Okay, moved by Paul,
I second.
seconded by Ruby. As amended. February 11th, right, John?
Yes.
All those in favor of the motion to amend, to accept the minutes as amended on February 11th meeting, and accept the minutes of March 4th and February 25th as written, signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Okay, the vote is 6 yes, no one opposed, no abstentions, Bristol excused. Okay, we are now at this discussion items for consideration of the board. At this point in time, we've had our discussion in non-public, so I would entertain a motion for the purpose of electing the new superintendent of schools. Is there a motion?
I would make a motion to nominate Stacy Buckley as superintendent of Newfound School District pending successful contract negotiations.
Is there a second?
Yes.
Okay, motion is made by Paul and seconded by Ruby. To elect Stacy Buckley as superintendent of schools pending a successful negotiation of superintendent's contract. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Opposed?
Any abstentions? Okay, Bristol absent. As is our tradition, the minority vote is recorded as being Hebron. Thank you. Under the next item of business, we are going to consider a motion to unseal the minutes of the non-public session of March 4th.
So moved.
Motion in favor of unsealing the minutes by Ruby,
Second.
seconded by Paul. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, then I would ask for all those that are in favor to say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? No. There are none. No abstentions? Okay, and Bristol is absent. Excuse. Okay, is there any other business before the SAU board? Hearing none, I would accept a motion to adjourn this evening's SAU board at 8:20?
8:28.
8:28 p.m.
So moved.
Okay. Motion to adjourn made by Paul. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Sue. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion passes 6-0, no abstentions. Bristol absent. Okay, we have completed the SAU business. And now it brings us to calling the meeting to order for the school board meeting. Scheduled for this evening, immediately to follow the SAU board meeting, which has ended. Again, my apologies for taking as long as we did. I would like to ask us all to salute the flag. Stand to our right. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I call upon Dr. McCormick to confirm the notice of posting of the meeting.
They were done in all the usual places.
Okay, so our meeting is confirmed at 8:30 p.m. Posting has occurred at the SAU office, the website, schools, and to town offices.
That is correct.
At this point in time, I will entertain a motion to go into non-public and call the roll to do so. The motion is made by Sue.
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Paul. Alexandria.
Yes.
Bridgewater, yes. Danbury.
Yes.
Groton.
Yes.
Hebron.
Yes.
New Hampton.
Yes.
Okay, at this point in time, at what is it?
8:31.
8:31. we will adjourn to our non-public at this point in time. A public session at 9:03. Again, thank you all for your patience this evening.
Specialized supplies. Middle school.
Let's see. We are now at item 4, to approve or modify the agenda. Is there a desire to do either?
May I speak to Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Deb Narrow and John Stewart send their regrets, but they were not able to stay for item B on your agenda, and they asked that they would be in touch to reschedule with their regrets.
And with our regrets, I will contact them and apologize.
Just as an offering in place of that, you may want to consider, the high school staff's been in the building now for 14 hours, you may want to consider moving them up on the agenda.
What a great idea. I would very definitely like to consider that, since we have a slot available to do that. And I guess the dangers of getting on the agenda early so far in advance create some problems with respect to scheduling when there are other pressing matters to deal with. So, again, we apologize to everyone that's waiting, but I see a motion to move, if you will, or request to move the item 9J into 9B. Is that correct?
Is that your item, Mike, 9J?
We're actually at
H.
H.
I'm sorry, you're right. I was looking at H when I said J. I'm ahead of myself, literally. Okay, we're moving, without objection, item 9H to 9B, and we'll reschedule 9B. Everyone okay with that? Okay. All right, we're also at item 5 at this point, which is for intercommunications. Everyone that's here is probably signed in. And any new faces out there that may want to receive packets, you can sign up by sending an email to Sue Cross at sau4.org. Or for those of you at home that might be interested in receiving the information. Under 9C, we're at public comment. Not limited to items on the agenda. If anyone has any public comment, are there any elected officials present? Seeing none, there are members of the public. Is anyone out there that would like to speak? Okay. Our faculty liaison, Mimi.
I actually have something.
Sorry for the delay. Thank you for waiting.
That's okay. Joanna had to go home and go to bed. She was falling asleep.
Yeah.
I brought you folks some flyers on the Caper Conference that's coming up, because it's quite an event. Every year I see the 7th graders going, I don't want to do this, I don't want to go to that, and they come back so excited and often talk about the fact that it was the highlight of their entire year. So just so you can see what the events are. And if you happen to have any time in your schedules, I'll just pass those down so you can see them. A lot of work goes into this, and it's really beneficial. Especially, one of the things I believe it starts with is some information from the police force about dangers online and the Facebook thing, and it's amazing the things that you don't think of that parents need to know.
I've attended these in the past with my children and found them very, very helpful, particularly for parents. Anything else, Mimi?
No, not that I can think of.
Where is it being held?
It's at New Hampton Prep School. They're on break next week, so it's a beautiful facility, and the Most of it's being done by our staff rather than having some outside people come in, so it's even more effective, I think.
This is currently scheduled for Friday, March 22nd, pretty much for most of the day, most of the school day. Just as an aside, I know that when Dr. Ross first took ill, this conference was on her mind about making certain that it got dealt with properly. That's how important she thought it was. Okay, with nothing further, we'll move on to 6A, which is approval of the minutes for the January 14th meeting. Does anyone besides me have corrections? Can you hear me, Leah?
Yep. Yes.
Okay, I'll go first. On page 2, 9A, we need to assess our security needs, which is the third line up from the bottom. Do you see it?
I'm not looking at it, I'm just.
All right, well,
typing
just
the
change the word that's there to assess. I'll leave the rest of you to your imagination.
Oh, okay. I thought it was a grammatical change because it says we need to look to assess.
Yes.
I would have just said we need
Got
to
it?
assess.
I'll check it out
Yes.
when I get there.
I'll mark it for you.
Thank you.
Under 9C, let's see. Dr. McCormick's report regarding SPED, we wanted to add that report to the minutes, please. It should be attached to the minutes. Okay, Leah?
Yes. Yep.
9D, page 3. Just should be candidates, committee will visit the candidates' districts, just possessive. Default budget discussion on 9E should be singular possessive, not plural. Under 9F, let's see, this should read, the intent at that time was to mirror the market image. We have made some dramatic strides. We are moving, this is how it should read, okay? Off Apple and towards PC devices, semicolon. We will be adding the Chrome operating system and other tablets and readers. Let's see. Under,
I'm not sure I agree with that. Sorry, but talk about something I said. We already have moved towards Chrome devices, so.
well, how's that different than we'll be adding Chrome operating system and other tablets and readers?
I'm just, okay, I just think,
We're gonna continue to do that, are we
Yeah,
not?
okay.
That's my point. I'm okay with that, if you wanna
Yeah,
say that.
that's fine.
Is that good, Dan?
Yeah.
We will be continuing to add the Chrome operating system and other tablets. Okay. Let's see, what did that say? Oh. Under 9H, regarding, the moderator will discuss Article 1 as listed. Dan Rossner will handle Article 2, operating budget, renumbered as Article 7. And at the very end, Leah, it said, Vincent noted petition articles are usually addressed by the petitioner, comma, but we will prepare slides to clarify info on this article. under 12G7 on page 7, the action was to recommend the school board does not support the rescission of the tax cap article. And then under 12J, regarding two communication plan, it should say, discuss communication plan to the voters for warrant articles, etc. Okay, that's all I had. Does anyone else have corrections to January 14th?
I had a couple.
Go ahead, Sue.
Okay, on page 6, 12G1, the retention article to be placed on the warrant as written. You don't need to say article after warrant. Okay. Now, on 12G7, I thought that we were just not going to take a position, that we voted to not take a position on that, not to not recommend it, but just not to take a position.
Yeah, that's
So it's probably
right.
too late now to fix that, but,
Well, no,
I think
maybe
you're
I
right.
was wrong. I just
you're right.
felt the same way. It's just that we needed to change the
Right.
wording that says, "To the school board does not support the rescission of the tax cap
Right.
article." That's not true.
it's, right, we just did, we voted to not take a position on that.
Right.
Yeah, why don't we just say that?
Yeah.
That's the correction that needs to be made, Leah. I'm cool with that.
Then your vote's off, isn't it?
What's that?
I think that's the decision you made after this motion failed. Because you have to vote as no, yes, 2, no, 5. So the motion failed. The motion to take a position
To not
against the
support.
support it failed.
Right.
And then in your discussion, you agreed to not take a position at all. But the motion was made
Oh, you're right.
to not support
Yeah.
it.
You're
And
right,
that motion
Dan.
failed.
See, because.
And then the subsequent discussion after that motion failed.
Oh, that's right.
Was
That's
to
why
not
I
take a
had it
position.
that way then. To
Okay.
recommend the school board does not support the rescission
Right.
of the tax cap article. So I was correct. Son of a
Okay.
gun, Sue.
But, but the rest of, okay, so
And
the
that
rest of
vote
that
failed.
story has to be, okay,
No.
I understand.
It
doesn't
was
have
the
to be-
action we took.
Right, it doesn't have to be in the minutes because we never
Minutes
did
doesn't
it.
have to be at that.
So-
That was on that action. It records the legal action.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Now, the other thing is, we did approve the 2 field trip requests on 12N. Should we list those 2 field trips, or should we not?
Are they not listed?
Are they
No.
earlier?
Aren't they attached to the minutes?
Maybe they're listed earlier.
That was placed on the consent
Yeah,
agenda.
they're
right?
listed earlier.
Okay, sorry,
Yeah.
my mistake. All right.
Okay, as amended, January 14th. Are there others? Okay, moving right along to February 11th. Any corrections?
I had more of a concern whether the action agreed to was taken on 9E, page 3.
Page 3.
Marie Ross Memorial Scholarship would be, there'd be a press release and put on the web.
Actually, I had a similar concern, and I sent an email to Dr. McCormick. Remember, Phil? And that very request is being followed up on
Okay.
between Dr. McCormick and Dan, right?
And the family.
And the family.
Okay.
So we're working on it.
Good.
That was another catch I had right there. Good catch. Or concern. Anyone else have February 11th corrections? Okay. Without objection, you know what, let's just deal with this. All those in favor of the January 14th minutes to be approved as written, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Should it be as amended?
No, the 11th. Wait a minute.
No,
I'm sorry,
the
you're right.
14th.
As amended, I meant to say that. Action to approve as amended, and it's I have them listed backwards here. Okay. That passed 6-0. For January 14th, is that clear with everyone?
Yeah.
Okay. The minutes of February 11th remain uncorrected with the noted request to act on the press release. All those in favor of accepting the minutes as written?
Aye.
Say aye. Those
Aye.
opposed, no. 6-0-0. All right. There are other minutes in the packet under item 7 for your review.
Excuse me, Vinnie,
Yes,
who made the motion and seconded?
the chair and the vice chair. It was done so quickly, you didn't hear either one of us.
Yeah.
Technicality, but
Exactly.
important nonetheless. Any comment, question, or issues with the other minutes that are in the packet that are green in color? Okay, the petition from the Danbury group regarding K through 6 configuration is attached to the minutes. As was, I would like to reiterate publicly, the Newfound Community Volunteer Center that has been put forth by a group of interested parents that we would like to encourage people to try to participate in to improve our parental participation in our schools. And if you would contact Megan McGrath to do so, whose email address is meg@blissfulworks.com. I would encourage you to do so. You can check online for the particulars on that in our minutes packet. Okay, no comments on any of the green minutes, which were data task force minutes. And now at correspondence and reports included in the packet. Now, ordinarily, we assume that everyone has read over the reports and may or may not have comments. I have a couple comments and maybe some others. Would anyone care to go first?
Sure.
Ruby,
My comments are on the middle school report.
the middle school.
I actually have 3 questions that I'd like to get the answers to, perhaps from you, Phil. And it has to do with the math scores for 2012, because they're significantly down for grade 7 and down a little bit for grade 8, and they're quite low. So my questions are, first, about these particular groups of students. Are they students who have not made progress before? Like, is this a group that's moving through that continues to test poorly? Or is this a group that used to test well that's not testing well now?
You're asking me now? I
No,
don't have.
no, I'm asking that you ask that question.
Sure.
So I didn't know if you were writing down my questions, so I was waiting.
I was, but then the
Okay.
way I said, oh my
No,
gosh, she's asked me,
so
I think she may be asking me a
I was just pausing to
question.
make sure that you, okay, the second question is, can you find out what the percentages are for the special ed population alone? Because they're not broken out. And the third question is about whether or not these are students who were involved in the transition to everyday math. I don't know how long we've been doing that for, but are they students who had one math curriculum then went to another? I'm just looking to see if there's some change that might have impacted their math abilities.
My questions on the report, are you done?
Yep.
Were similar in that the drop was in a total of 15 percentage points in grade 7, and I was very concerned about that, having looked at it. Phil and I spoke about this in one-on-one, and he was going to commence looking into it to be able to report back to the board. That is appears anyway to be a precipitous drop in test scores. Grade 8 math was also down by 3 points. Grade 8 reading stayed about the same. Grade 7 reading dropped 4 points.
Mr. Migliori?
So this was of concern. Phil?
It had been my intention, and not knowing how you had dealt with this in the past, was I asked the administrative team, I think at least 2 weeks ago, if not a month ago, about how has the district handled a presentation to the school board. And I was informed that Mr. Chase usually, for the district, makes a presentation to the board, and if it so meets your needs, I would plan to ask him to do that for your April board meeting, regular scheduled board meeting, at which time he would be able to answer these specific questions that you give, as well as give an overall presentation on district-wide scores.
So that's essentially how we're going to get those answers.
Yep, okay.
Whether it's the April meeting or not, we'll see, given the fullness of the schedule, but we
right.
gotta pick a target, so.
Right,
So,
correct.
okay, any other comments on any of the reports?
For Dan, line 2600 and 2721, they're both significantly less. Do you know why?
2,600, I would attribute largely to heating oil costs. When you look at the, I assume you're looking at the year-to-date, not the month-to-date.
Right.
And the bulk of our bills for heating oil, yes, we've paid, but the February bills haven't come through the system yet by February 28th. So I would attribute a large portion of the year-to-date on
Not having the
my
bill.
maintenance and heating oil, but also the electricity costs. We, as you may remember, we changed electricity sources for supply purposes in a contract that was signed last June, which cut our cost of electricity by about 25% per kilowatt hour. But the budget for this year had already been built. Transportation, I think, is largely a function of it being, I would need to look into it more. I think that a chunk of it has to do with the fact that the special ed team has been working to bring certain students back from out-of-district placements, and that's saving certainly in special ed transportation. I also think our fuel costs are, with our joining the state DOT fuel distribution system, we'll probably see some savings in that department as well. But I haven't done it in depth on transportation year-to-date.
Anyone else? Comments on reports? Okay, hearing nothing further, we are now at discussion items. 9A, Wellness Council. Is that you, Ian?
It is now at 9:30.
Thanks for sticking around. I thought you were just here for the wonder
Well,
of it.
no, I offered to stay for the two people that couldn't attend.
Yeah. Gosh, this has been,
So,
again, my apologies to the Wellness Council.
so on behalf of the Wellness Council, Reagan Curran was going to present tonight, and the individual from the Franklin Hospital that's been a great member of the council, but unfortunately they have family commitments that they needed to head back home for, so I volunteered just to step in for them. And so we do have a wellness, council and a wellness policy. This council is looking to update the wellness policy over the next few weeks and next couple months. And so they're also looking, and talking with Phil's been a great addition to meeting with them. They meet on a monthly basis. The chair is the middle school nurse. And so they talk about the different wellness activities that are run through our district, and they are listed on the bottom of the handout that was just passed. These are some of the activities that take place to initiate and talk about how, as a school and as a district, we can make a better choice of being healthier. And so their big thing right now is coming together to get more people to join the council. They, at least 4 times a year, they need a school board member to sit in on the meeting, and they also are looking for an administrator to sit on that. And that is part of my understanding is the mandate to continue to have free and reduced monies through the system. And so they're looking to make sure that we have that as we continue to move forward with putting this new policy together. So they're looking forward to doing that in the next, couple of, hopefully by the end of this school year, to really have it ready for next year. And again, I spoke on their behalf. I don't feel that if we need to clarify anything that I just said, or because you have attended the meetings more regularly than I have. So.
And I missed the last one. Yeah. If I may, Mr. Migliore,
Yes, please.
I think their intent was just to come before the board to give you an update on the work that they're doing and the fact that this is a substantive committee with work the work that they do does impact the district significantly, both in the wellness of all people in the district, as well as fiscally with the requirement from the feds and state that we need to have this policy and the work of the council.
The other thing that I will say on this is that they did have an explicit request to get on the policy committee's agenda for the next meeting to have the wellness policy addressed, because it appears to be a little bit out of date. And the one meeting I attended recently was to address that issue of how to go about getting it addressed. And they were waiting for the school board policy committee to address it, but my suggestion was set it up in such a way that you can succinctly say, this is what we recommend to the committee, so the committee could deal with it more expeditiously, but on its upcoming agenda. And so that's the request of the Wellness Council as well. And the first step to do that was to make a presentation this evening at what was to be approximately 7 o'clock. And again, my apologies, but Anne, thank you so much for volunteering and yet again stepping up as a terrific member of our administration. So kudos to you for doing that. Thank you. Okay, we have moved item 9H. Actually, Mike, I said that it was J just to see if you were paying attention. Up to, which was the alternative schedule update, up to 9B. So we'd like to give our high school principals, been here for quite a while, this entire day, the audience.
No worries, I appreciate it. Thanks for moving this up. So we're here for the third time to give you yet another update on what was drafted in committee in September and October and refined a little bit in November. And then for the first time brought in front of the board in December, again in January, and we were not here during the short month of February, for an alternative to the schedule that we have now moving forward. And its feasibility for school improvement and for doing some of our redesign work that would give us better opportunity to give targeted direction to some of our lower performing students. And I would refer you to your board report that I've written, because that update in that board report looks like this, and there's one page. It's pretty succinct and could be all I need to tell you, but I'm not. I'm going to highlight a little bit of what is in that board report segment and then give you a little bit more information.
It's not white, is it?
I think it is.
No.
I don't know what color they use over at the SAU, but probably it is white.
I think it's mixed in with your principal's report.
It is the principal's report.
Okay.
I'm sorry. It's one and the same.
The backside of it.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there was some information on the back of that about the FAR board's visit. We may discuss that at another time. That was interesting, but really, the process for informing the school community and seeking feedback regarding the draft of an alternative schedule possibility for next year is what this leads off talking about. And perhaps if we'd called it a plan, it would have been less exciting to people, because there was a measured response by many, and then there was an emotional response by others. And we've sought to have this be very public and very transparent and long-running, a run-up through the winter months and into the capability of moving forward, or not. And we talked about that when we first brought this as a proposal last December. Some of the feedback has been positive, some has been not in favor of an alternative schedule, but the lessons we've learned are about the design. And that's what we wanted to vet, and that's why we put this out to so many constituencies, brought it forward so often, and we have some lessons learned. It is a change of substance because there has never been a schedule change at the high school. Not since I've been here, not since I was teaching here, and so the idea of the culture sustaining the notion of a difference in the timing of the schedule was, I think, somewhat underestimated. Nonetheless, we've also learned that in this particular alternative, there was insufficient prep time on one of the days for staff that is their bargained right. And that's something that is a design flaw we have to fix if we were going to continue thinking about using this form of an alternative schedule. There was a clear expression from some of our AP kids that they were worried about having their time in a block, and would that be sufficient for continuity of learning if that block wasn't consistent, and that hasn't been their experience. They have been in a 7-day period and had a smaller block of time every day of the week for all of their years here. The long guided study blocks were in addition to regular study halls, which if we looked again at the design, we might not include that, because that was some concern about the amount of time spent in study halls, even though the guided study was described as being different than the regular study halls. And in our public forum, parents expressed some concern about the regulation and supervision of students during the office hours. The office hours was a novel approach, and may still be one, to trying to connect students with more time with their teachers for follow-up, follow-through, reteaching, retesting, getting better organized, and having the work fundamentally in front of them and planned to do so that they could deliver and hopefully achieve from it. At the same time that these concerns were evident as obstacles in the design and things that needed to be looked at and still do, there has been some support, both from staff and students, for, in particular, that idea of reconnecting more often students with teachers in the office hours. There could be a slower approach to this, a stepping stone approach to create better experience with it, more comfort. Finally, it was clear, and I put it in the report, that we are not on the schedule we reported in January. We do not intend to dry run this schedule in this month of March. We have some more thinking to do, more corrections to make, but that we want to continue to make it very public about what we do and why we're doing it. And so in that respect, wanted to give you a piece of data, a set of expressions by our kids that when you can see was the result of meetings from all three classes, 9th, 10th, and 11th grades, in the month of January. So one at a time, we took each of those grades into the theater during their advisory period, and we presented the alternatives, the alternative schedule to them, and took questions and answers. And we actually did a survey while they were there, while they were with us, and after we clarified their first looked at it. And this is the result by grade. Freshmen, 17 surveys were returned from the group that day. The sophomores the next day returned 56 surveys. And if you look at the back, the junior class returned 71 surveys. Responses to the surveys were in terms of both what benefits we asked the students they thought they saw, and also what challenges they saw in the schedule. And so the responses to what benefits by class are enumerated there, and so are the responses to the challenges enumerated. And you can see the numbers in the data. So just as an example, because I'm not going to read through the whole thing, if you look at the sophomore examples, the most popular benefits at the bottom of the page, they thought that, well, out of the 56 studies, 25 liked the guided study and used or might use guided study for clubs or seeing teachers or work on projects. And so I think they're also commenting about the office hours at that point, because that's how we design the office hours, to get to teachers seeing them for what I just described. 15 just flat out said that it was a benefit because there would be more time with teachers for those activities. In the guided study halls and at other times, there'd be more time to work out and complete homework. The challenges, well, the challenges were the same for all three groups. When they looked at the schedule, they thought, well, first time out, it's confusing. It's hard to understand, and that was a function of having seen it for the first time. Once they understood the elements within it, anybody looking at it over time can figure it out, because it's kind of like a bus schedule. Once you know how to put the pieces in that you're looking for, you see what the time is that is important to you and how to use it. But I think that we need to have more than an explanation for how the schedule looks. We need a model for rosters within it, time within it, where teachers would be, room numbers, a real representation, so that we could feel everybody knows where they'd be, how they'd be working, and what they'd be doing. And right now, the problem is that we've run into the time of year where we can't do that, not explicitly over the whole alternative schedule, because in February, we, in advisory, started the rescheduling process, and we have got all of the course sheets back from all of our kids, and March is the month in which we schedule. So to be simultaneously working at this while we do normally what is the norm for each of our years and get the school scheduled for next year, just flat out isn't going to be possible. So we may have overreached in the timing, or we may have started too late. That is, if we had started last summer and we got the first approaches to the board and to everybody in September, maybe we would have been 60, 70 days in front of our schedule. And so we're not only not going to have the March week of practice, we're going to take a step back and we're going to look at what we do have time for, and it's a drill down into, and for exactness in building the models for two parts of the alternative schedule, looking explicitly at what the guided studies would look like and the office hours. Those are still opportunities that we have to work on. And those present opportunities for us, should we reach conclusions and have good models and be able to share them, that could be started in next year's schedule, still within a 7-period day, not within that alternative model that had the larger blocks on 2 of the 5 days, or in 40% of the schedule. And so we want to continue doing that. And in fact, there's a meeting tomorrow for the reconvening of the scheduling committee, but as you look at it, it will only include the topics of office hours and guided study. The common planning time is there because there's a question of whether or not that time for teachers to commonly plan around looking at student work and creating curricula within their departments is time for teachers, but it's not expressly prep time. And in the entitlement of the contract, it says preparatory time, and that's not collaborative. And that's to be protected, and we understand that. And most especially didn't want to make that a wedge issue, because we weren't trying to do a workaround in the alternative schedule. There was no attempt to hide, or in some instance to make it unclear that teachers would have one less prep period. That just flat out was a design error. And we want to get people's comfort with that so that if, in fact, we can do the guided study or the office hours as a stepping stone approach within the 7-period schedule, we have people on board with that, and we're not colliding with indifference or with confusion. And so we want to take time to make sure we're talking the same language when we use common planning time versus prep time. And so we're going to have those discussions a little bit further. If the opportunities for those two facets occur, the question would be where and when in the daytime would they be best as an approach to undertake. So we want to look at that. And someone looking at the timeline expresses what I've said about how we're colliding with getting ready for next year again already, I know as well. We have so many people to do that, and as good as Monica Jackson is, we've got to buckle down and make sure we have all our scheduling tight and all the kids in the right places for what they signed up for next year also. So we'll be coming out into the break in April with that completely done, and hopefully the schedule's back out to kids. So Jim, I don't know if you want to add or subtract from what I've said, but that's an update on where we are and why we're there. I think that, again, I started by saying any idea we had about an alternative schedule was only in view of what it is that we thought it would express as an opportunity for school improvement, for bearing down on particular aspects of academic functioning and achievement, and that if it weren't in that direction, we wouldn't have it for its own sake. We still believe that. And so over time, the very best attempt to look at achievement is going to decide the direction of any schedule. And we have time to step back and look at that.
Anyone have questions?
I just had a comment. I actually like the idea of office hours in theory. The schedule I thought was confusing too.
Yeah.
So I wonder about giving 2 people same duty time, and maybe they alternate. One day they're doing the guided study, the other day they have office hours.
We've thought about that, Ruby, in relation to rotating the advisories too, because that's allowable time for alternatives. Right now, we see it very beneficial just for advisories 5 days a week, but if it were free and we had a model for office hours that people understood in 2 of those advisory periods, would that be a way to practice it, to work it out? Because we predict where everybody's going to be at that point, so building the model to show people that, where the rosters are, where the teachers are, where the rooms are,
Right.
Could be self-designed and made a lot easier.
And then it's in a duty and no prep impact, right?
That's definitely one of the ideas that's been in our head.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Dr. McCormick?
No, thank you.
Did you, I do have one more. Did you share my comment about the power visit last time? I left
Last
early.
meeting.
Yes?
Whatever you had on your paper, I shared.
Okay,
Yes,
just that
everything.
school was very calm. That's what my colleagues said. Kids are constantly moving at our school. They're never where they're supposed to be. So here, the person was very impressed with how orderly our school is here. Yeah.
They made another comment, because those weren't all of them, but we have the car board report in its finality now. That was a foreshadowing of it, and we'll share that with you. They said it was noticeable for lack of stress. We had a faculty meeting just after that to share it, and I'm not sure they concurred that there was a lack of stress. And then
They talked about the comfort level too. They felt the students had a really high level of comfort in the school, which is good.
Yeah.
So that's all.
Thank you, Mike.
You're
It
very welcome.
certainly appears that you have heard some of the concerns, I think, that were
Oh, yeah.
expressed. So,
And I think we're better off taking them to heart and looking at how to make them into positives. It's more inclusive.
Yeah.
And then when we actually do go to that change, it'll be powerful.
to your credit,
Yep.
thank you. Appreciate you sticking around. Thanks, Jim. Okay, without objection and hearing none, the chair would like to take up the issue of 9G, which is student residency and tuition in the next sequence. So I'd like to discuss the requirements on that. We had talked about a request that was given to us in non-public regarding a waiver of tuition at this point. And at the point in time when we move forward with that, we will entertain a motion to address it from a positive perspective. Any further comment on the student residency or tuition request?
Only that there were two separate requests.
Two separate requests, right? To clarify. And this is with respect to policy JECB, that's Jasper, Edward, Charlie, Baker. Okay, we're now moving to item 9C, request for keys to Danbury Elementary School. Dan.
I was just, excuse me, as the administrator charged with responsibility for facilities, we did have a request that I detailed in my monthly report. Two requests for exemption from policy ECAAR regarding access to buildings. First request is for a key to Danbury Elementary School to be given to New Hampshire State Trooper Mike Fenauer. I apologize if I'm not pronouncing the name correctly. This was his request that he brought to that building administrator, saying that the request came in very shortly after the tragedy in Newtown, Connecticut. It was an offer on his part that he can, if we were to give him a key to the school, he would register it with his troop so that they know, so the troop is aware he has one if there's ever an emergency. He lives very close to the school and was basically offering to be on a short list, for lack of a better term, of people with access in case they were an emergency, and we wanted to provide him that access. The second request was for the ability to provide keys on a temporary basis to PTO officials. This would facilitate their meeting in school buildings without an administrator being present or custodial overtime for access to the buildings. That would, the first request would be on a semi-permanent basis. The second request I envision being as they're picking up a key or being handed a key the day of the meeting and returning it the next morning.
Anyone have questions for Dan on this? Okay, there's a motion prepared, yellow sheet, for our action later for additional consideration.
I think the only comment I would make is that the second one at least also, we should note the policy KG about use of the building.
Well, that comes up later on the agenda tonight.
Yeah, but it's part of this also.
I would suggest to you that the PTO meetings probably are inherently exempt from my concerns about KG.
Yeah.
Because they are school-based
yeah.
meetings, whereas the meetings I'm asking for clarification on, and my request for clarification on KG is about meetings that aren't directly school-related.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be clear that I'm not, I am merely providing the conduit for your consideration on this motion. I'm not advocating one way or the other.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dan.
Yep.
Any questions for Dan on the Danbury key request? Hearing none, we'll move on to 9B, adherence to policy KG, community use of school facilities. Mr. Rossner.
Recently, ever since I began working here, there have been community organizations using our buildings, and we, one of the first things we did was put together a form that any organization that wants to use a building for a purpose would fill it out, turn it into the building administrator, who would check it against the school's calendar, see if it was available, approve it, and it would be forwarded on to my office, just so we're aware. Recently, there was a meeting that had been scheduled at this building, and I don't remember the exact chain of how it occurred, but I was directed to enforce policy KG in terms of collecting a rental fee for the use of the auditorium. The policy does, I think we included a copy in your packet, it does have a specific fee schedule for different rooms, for different buildings, and so my question to you is, if I'm enforcing it for one group, should I be enforcing it for all? I mean, if the Girl Scouts are meeting once a month, if the rec center is using our athletic fields. If a request came across my desk today for some political committee, some towns, I want to say it was the town's Democratic committee or something like that, or Republican committee, whatever it was, who wanted to meet in one of the buildings, have their monthly or semi-annual meeting. I just want your direction. I'll enforce the policy if you want. I'll let it go because they're community organizations if you want. I just want.
That's exactly how this came up, because it was a political meeting. So the question given to us was, can public buildings be used for political purposes? And we looked at the policy together, and it doesn't ban anything. You can have a baptism, you can have a wedding, you can have whatever you want here. You can have the Republican or Democratic National Convention meeting here, but you have to pay the fee. That's what our policy says. And when we built the multipurpose room in Danbury, they invited the public in for an open house, and they said you'll be able to use it whenever you want, and then they charged every single group who asked for it $50. So they stopped asking. So I was surprised that we weren't charging when it came to it.
I noticed Bridgewater has room